Kia ora koutou. Thank you for that, Nada. So you'll see from the slide, I'm George. That's Gabi. We both work at Selwyn District Council. I've been there just over 3 years. Gabi's been there a bit longer. So Gabi's the urban design lead at council, and I work in the strategy team. I'm currently the strategy team leader. My work is involved in spatial planning, growth planning, area-based plans, and we do a lot of work around around projections, which is mainly what I'll be presenting on today, on this intentionally provocative title of Rolleston as a emerging city. Gabi, I don't know if you want to talk about what you get up to.
Yeah, well, as George said, I've been working for council for quite some time. I don't really want to think about it, but it's been at least 13 years. So I have come across projects and work, for a long time. I guess my work is sort of more like on the grassroots level, and today I will be talking to you a bit more about the sort of philosophical approach behind that type of policy initiatives.
Hi, so I'll just give a really brief introduction of Waikirikiri Selwyn. I know being at Lincoln University, everyone's probably familiar with the district, but just for some people online who perhaps aren't, it's a really vast district and it's a really diverse district, and it really does embody that Ngāi concept of Kuta Kitai, from the mountains to the sea and kind of everything in between. The district stretches from the Southern Alps to the Port Hills and the sea to the east. It's the 4th largest territorial authority area in terms of land area in Waitaha, Canterbury, and also we're the 2nd most populous territorial authority area in Canterbury, second only to Christchurch City. We've been experiencing immense growth across the district. So since 2009, the population has more than doubled. And just in the last decade alone, we've had a 74% increase. So exponential growth initially occurred as a result of the Canterbury earthquake sequence and that real push factor of people from Christchurch City out to the district and from other parts of Canterbury over that time as well. We're experiencing many more pull factors now where people are voting with their feet and coming to the district. The district's been growing, one of the fastest growing districts in the country for the last few years, 2nd at the moment to Queenstown Lakes. But we're growing on an average of 5% per annum, and 5% per annum for the last decade, where the national average is around 2.1%. So immense growth, and our population projections, the ones that we have in-house as well as the ones by stats, are showing this growth continuing. So strategic and spatial planning and the work that my team does is kind of organised across 3 distinct areas of Selwyn. We've got the Malvern area, which is a diverse area ranging from the Arthur's Pass National Park, the alpine environments, the high country, to the foothills and the downlands and some of the upper plains, to the Ellesmere area, which is really defined by Te Waiora, its margins, the backdrop of the Port Hills, and obviously a real important cultural centre for Taumutu, Runanga. Today I'm going to focus on Eastern Selwyn, and Eastern Selwyn is this area here, which is the smallest in land area, but has the highest concentration of the district's population. It's part of this larger sub-metropolitan regional area known as Greater Christchurch. So this map here shows the Selwyn portion of this Greater Christchurch area, but Greater Christchurch is made up of Christchurch City, the metropolitan centre of Christchurch City, and as well as the Lyttelton Harbour Basin, the southeast of Waimakariri district, so Rangiora, Kaiapoi, and then this Eastern Selwyn area, which has some key towns for us in terms of population. And we're going to focus on Rolleston today, which is the largest town in Eastern Selwyn. So there's been a coordinated approach to spatial and strategic planning in Greater Christchurch, that area I showed on the last slide, since around 2007 with the urban development strategy. But I was just looking, preparing for today, that the work actually goes back further than that. So it goes back to 2004, where the Greater Christchurch Partnership, as it's now known, came together and began to develop the evidence base for that first urban development strategy back in 2007. So since that time, there's been a concerted effort to have cross-boundary, cross-council partnership to think about the strategic challenges and opportunities facing this sub-regional area, Greater Christchurch. The Greater Christchurch Partnership is what leads that that work, and the Greater Christchurch Partnership is an evolution of the Urban Development Strategy Implementation Committee, which was formed in 2007, and it's a voluntary coalition, the partnership between local government, central government, Mana Whenua, and other government agencies as well, to really take that collaborative approach to spatial planning. The partnerships provided a forum to address some huge challenges for the sub-region, including recovery and resilience efforts after the earthquake, and then future growth and spatial planning. So it starts here with the urban development strategy, this kind of period of recovery with the land use recovery plan, and then moving from a recovery to a kind of a new era of growth and development through our space, the first future development strategy, and then the resilience strategy later in 2016. And then there's been some background and foundational work leading into the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, which I want to talk to a little bit at the moment. The Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan is quite new. It's only just been endorsed by the Greater Christchurch Partnership and then adopted by the partner councils. And the spatial plan it's been a huge milestone for us to get there, and it's about setting that growth trajectory out to a population of about 1 million. So when we start looking as a sub-regional area like Auckland today, so and that's what the projections are indicating for the sub-region. So it's trying to plan for really sizable growth across the sub-region in a coordinated way. So the spatial plan is a blueprint for accommodating that population growth and the business growth, and thinking of decarbonising the economy and see a mode shift in terms of our transport. It's largely led by two overarching directions for growth, which is targeted intensification around our main centres and along public transport corridors, and to enable prosperous development of kanga nohanga on Māori land, but also in urban areas as well. So the spatial plan sets our preferred pattern of growth, our preferred urban form direction out into the future. And a large body of work that was foundational for the spatial plan was on the preferred route for mass rapid transit in Greater Christchurch. So in the spatial plan, there's some key maps, one of them being map 2 of the spatial plan, which is the spatial strategy out to 1 million people. Rather than a year, it's based on when we reach that milestone. And what's really key about that is thinking about mass rapid transit as a city shaping project, but also how that extends to the district. So the mass rapid transit route is a 22-kilometre road-based MRT route. It's still mode agnostic at the moment. It could be bus rapid transit, light rail. That's to be developed and gone through at the next stage of the project in terms of the business case. But what a key thing for spatial planning is we have the corridor. So then we know exactly how we need to respond and react to growth in a really intentional, coordinated, transport orientated way. So focusing on Rolleston, we can see the mass rapid transit corridor here runs from Hornby along the Riccarton Road corridor, and then we have the Papanui corridor to Papanui and extending out to Belfast. For us, Hornby is a really important terminus for the district. It's where we'll see Rolleston, Prebleton and Lincoln, the real golden triangle of the country. This is a huge growth area for us, and how we'll connect to that mass rapid transit system. So at the moment, Rolleston's been particularly good at growing out rather than up, but in order to support mass rapid transit, we're going to have to see a change in the density in the town and the typologies to make sure we have that critical mass to support either an enhanced public transport connection to mass rapid transit in the city, or in the future having mass rapid transit extend out to the district. So this is a key bit of work that we're looking at in the moment with our spatial strategic planning at Selwyn. So with the spatial plan being adopted by council just last month, we're at a really important juncture to think about what does this entail for the future of Rolleston. The spatial plan, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, is the most contemporary strategic or spatial direction for Rolleston we've had for some time. So firstly, Rolleston is recognised as a main town, as a major town, sorry, in a network of town and urban centres. So what does that mean for Rolleston? Well, the spatial plan tells us that we can expect a larger range of commercial offering, a huge uplift in the density and typologies, a broader range of activities and services to be provided in the district relative to the position it is now. So expecting a change in in typologies where we're predominantly focused at the moment. Our stock is focused on standalone housing. We're seeing a change now to some more of this duplex semi-detached housing and trying to push for a more dense typology. So we'll have more households per hectare in order to support that critical mass for mass rapid transit, but also other things in terms of livability, affordability, other challenges facing urban areas, which I'm sure everyone's well versed in. Rolleston and the town centre and surrounds are also identified in the spatial plan as a priority development area. So you can see there's on this map here, this is I think map 4 of the spatial plan, there's a whole range of different priority areas across the sub-region. Rolleston's identified as one of those, and these priority areas are have been identified, the priority development areas through technical work, as a place for significant opportunity for accelerated development, for exemplar projects, for a step change in what we're seeing in terms of development and growth at the moment. So you'll see for Rolleston, this is this spine down the middle of the town, Tennyson Street, Springs from Rolleston Road, the town centre, which Gabi's been doing a lot of mahi in, and we'll get into, as well as a key hub or potential future terminus to start that connection to Lincoln and to Prebbleton as well. So we've got that direction now through the spatial plan. So the next steps will be acting on that direction, exploring these priority areas and the actions and investment and collaboration we'll need from different agencies to deliver on the aspirations for the town. So Rolleston's experienced immense growth. So these are the stats NZ population estimates. So go from 1996 to the most recent being in June 2023. And you can see that Rolleston's had immense growth. Particularly, you'll notice how the graph goes up around the aftermath of the Canterbury earthquake sequence. We see this huge change in our growth from there. So today, the population of Rolleston is around 30,000. It was just under that in June 2023. The population's grown by 194% in the last 10 years, and it's more than doubled since 2016. So in the last 8 years, Rolleston's doubled in size. It's been really great to do these presentations. I don't often get to delve back into this information data as often as I would like. So I had a look at the growth just since 2019, which is what I'm terming as the start of the kind of pandemic era, when you start hearing about COVID-19 in Wuhan and whatnot overseas around 2019. And 1 in 3 people who live in Rolleston today arrived since that pandemic era, since 2019. So that's a huge amount of growth in recent terms. So essentially 10,000 of that 30,000 since then. This population growth is expected to continue, and the presentation title, Rolleston as a Future City, was intentionally provocative to start reframing our thinking about Rolleston as a town, this kind of sleepy dormitory to Christchurch City with pavements on one side of the road, suburban sprawl incarnate, to start thinking, well, what does it mean when we grow to a city? What are the challenges that we're not thinking about right now that are going to be more prevalent, dealing with the Auckland anniversary floods, and a huge example about the sponginess of our urban areas and cities. And we're getting talk now, even in smaller towns like Rolleston, which does have quite generous sections in green space, about urban heat island effects. So we're starting to reframe our thinking about the challenges facing Rolleston from a town when we start thinking of it as a city. So it's quite intentional and it's a bit provocative. So we're using quite a blunt instrument for this presentation of a population threshold of 50,000 as the definition for a city, which is in the Local Government Act as when you can say that you're a city council or the district council, but a population exceeding 50,000 is a reality for Rolleston, probably as early as 2047, and that's based on our high growth scenario. So Rolleston would be comparable in 24 to 30 years' time as other small cities in New Zealand, so Rotorua, Nelson, Invercargill, Whangarei and Hastings. So I just want to show the different projections we have. So I have put a dot here for the medium projection, which sees us just under 50,000 by the end of our projections go out to 2054 from our base year in 2022. But our high projection sees us reaching or surpassing that 50,000 mark, perhaps as early as 2047. Just to put it in context, Stats New Zealand develop a range of projection scenarios. These are based on the key determinants of population growth, that's being fertility, mortality, and migration. So they have a low, medium, and high, and that they change the stated assumptions based in terms of more deaths, more migration on the high, medium, or low. Selwyn has continually outstripped the high projection. So we use, unlike other councils, the high projection for our growth projection. So it's quite realistic that we could see a population of 50,000 around that time based on the high projection. With growth, we're not just experience a change in terms of the number of people living there, we're growing, but we're also changing. So Rolleston's becoming increasingly diverse and it's becoming older. So we're experiencing growth across all ranges, but particularly at those older ages. So we believe that Rolleston is experiencing aging in place. That's a greater percentage in the number at older ages, seemingly because people are staying in the town that they've moved to at a younger age. It could also be that there's replacement of older migrants as well. So we're maintaining that older age through inward migration of older migrants, but our migration age profile shows that for Selwyn, rather than Rolleston, we get very low levels of migration at those older ages. So Rolleston is particularly a place where people are moving to start a family, to have a fairly generous size section and house with multiple bedrooms and growing into that house, starting a family or coming with a family. And most of our growth is made up of internal migration. That's people moving from elsewhere in Canterbury to Rolleston. And people are finding that they can meet their needs here throughout their life stages, despite some challenges in terms of a not very diverse housing stock. But people are finding that they are able to age in place. So we're experiencing an aging population, and that's a trend that's seen nationally, but it's something that we'll need to think about going forward for our growth and the services and the needs that we'll need to meet in the town, but also wider Selwyn. So you'll see on the graph here that we are experiencing growth across all age ranges, but I just want to focus on this 65 plus one, which you'll see is going up so much faster than the other broad age groups, the other age cohorts. So aging is a real challenge, as a national challenge. It's something that we're thinking about quite a lot at the moment in terms of future growth and planning for that growth. So these are population pyramids. These are quite interesting because this shows before we had the broader age cohorts, but these show them in those 4-5 year increments. What's quite interesting about this is for Rolleston. So on the left here, that's the current day. That's 2022, I believe, and this is at the end of our projection range, 2054. So you'll see the pyramid filling out at the topper end, but also around the middle and lower ends as well, but quite considerably in those older ages. So in 2023, that's the pyramid on the left, 7.8% of the population of Rolleston is 65 and older. Now in 2054, the pyramid on the right, over 20% of the population will be 65 and older. So that's relative to the total population. So 20% is a huge jump in that 65 and older category, and it actually has some. It actually is a huge milestone in terms of demography, because once a population of a given area is over 20%, that's when you move into something known as hyper aging. So that means that growth will be very low to almost negative in terms of natural increase. That's births. The growth from Rolleston from that point onward will be almost all reliant on migration, just because we'll have so much of a population at that older age. So we'll go from a period where we've had natural increase, that's more births and deaths, to one of potentially natural decline, where we're getting more deaths than births. So our growth will be based on migration. So I'll just finish on this slide here. So part of our work in my team is taking not just the population projections, but also translating that into households and then into dwellings. This is really important for our growth planning. So we know what we'll need in terms of our land for housing to meet the needs of a growing population. So we use the Stats NZ population estimates as a base year, and some of the assumptions that they use for their population projections to project our future households and dwellings. So we use some assumptions from Stats NZ. These are living arrangements and household formation rates. That converts our population to households. And then we use the households and some information from the census in terms of dwellings, those being occupied and occupied. It's the utilisation record to say how many dwellings we'll need based on the number of households. So for Rolleston out to 2050, we can see there's almost a doubling of population, households and dwellings. So within the next 28 years, that's out to 2050. I chose 2050 for this, thinking of net zero commitments for 2050. We'll be adding a Rolleston of 2021 on top of Rolleston today in that period out to 2050. So at the time of lockdowns and stuff, and the population of Rolleston, just casting my mind back to what it was like then, everybody who was living there at that time will be putting that on top of Rolleston today, which I think is huge growth and a really great way to think about the growth that we'll be experiencing in the future and what we'll need to do about that growth. So that's kind of the end for Rolleston's growth and its growth outlook. I'll get Gabi to talk a little bit more about what's happening on the ground. So less graphs, more pictures.
Thanks, do I take your jacket and hold this like that all the time? It's kind of a bit awkward, isn't it?
You just hold it like that.
If you're not going to move it on the table.
Is that all right?
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Thank you so much for, digesting all these facts and figures, obviously. So I'll hopefully start with a little bit something lighter, or as I called it, a bit of a philosophical approach, or the dream of one man. So why all this growth? It's kind of, Rolleston back in the day, in the middle of nowhere, no obvious features, no water, no mountains, no bush, pretty much nothing. And yet there was this one man, Norman Kirk, who was a premier at the time, who said, Rolleston, that's going to be the town of the future. And he had this vision and thought of, I think, 1,000 people were there back in the day. And he wanted to have a city of 50 to 80,000 people. And everyone was laughing about him. And, especially you guys might have recalled that sign on the state highway that said Rolleston, town of the future. When I first came into New Zealand 20 years ago, I was one of those laughing. Well, no one's laughing now, eh? So when you look at how this growth was happening, you can really sort of pin it down to about 3 sort of main catalysts, and I've popped them on the slide. So back in 2002, quite small council, as in Selwyn District Council, really flexible on their feet. They were forward thinking, bit of growth was happening, and at the time there was an abundance of land on the northern part of the state highway. So council got together and thought, right, we don't just want to build houses, we actually want to give jobs to the people, and that's sort of when the idea for iZone manifested. So iZone is in about 180 hectare award-winning and purpose-built industrial zone. So it's not just an industrial zone, but it has been purpose-built, and it's at the moment expanding as well with 2 inland ports. And the difference was, back in the day, what was so attractive about it, that it was cheaper than land in Christchurch, and that the council made it also real easy for people who were interested to, buy in. So, I-zone. And then the next thing happened, the earthquakes. George mentioned it, it's huge effects, obviously, but one of the main outcomes was that the government decided to act with actually releasing greenfield land that was earmarked for a slow release and dropped it in an instant. So there were the Hasher Act released land, and all of a sudden there was an abundance of land available, greenfield land, to say. And then I put there location. That's probably the third and most important part, because before the earthquakes, no one really sort of took note of the ground conditions. You can engineer everything. But after the earthquakes, with, I guess, liquefaction in mind, and solid ground became Rolleston's trump card, or what I would call the joker. So all of a sudden, this boring bit with flat land became really, really interesting for good, cheap land for developers and invest long-term into a township. So that's one of the main reasons. And the other one is also we're now really closely located to the metropolitan area of Christchurch. With the extension of the motorway, you can be in the city within 15 minutes. And then the other thing is the railway line. So come to think about it, it's actually it's no surprise that it is a really strategically good location for growth. George has given you all the background information. I will just touch base on it, but as a council, obviously, we decided, okay, all this growth is happening back in 2007. We need to do something about it and develop the Rolleston structure plan. And why I put that slide on there is because that was adopted in 2009 for about 800 hectares of land that we developed a plan sort of outlined here, which sort of states, the main densities, where reserves should go, the main linkages. So pretty much land use, transport, and movement and infrastructure. That's another really important thing, planning for the future with the infrastructure, sewer, water, and stormwater. And that was developed 2009 to manage all this growth. But look what happened. This was in the 70s, about 1,000 people there. Then in the 2000s, you can sort of see that still all the growth is on the south. So this is the state highway, just to give you sort of context. Still happening along the main spine roads, development to the south. But 2010, I-zone has started to the north, and the whole township has been massively expanding up until today, where the extent of the Rolleston structure plan to the south and the southwest. So this is the yellow line sort of demonstrates the metropolitan urban limit. We've already almost reached it. So our growth is good and provides opportunities. There's massive challenges associated with that. And just pick kind of a urban structure that sort of, highlights the different times when all these little subdivisions got built and the different styles. That's more of a grid work here. Others have sort of favored the crescent development. But what challenge it brings for us is how do these all of a sudden connect? So we don't just want subdivisions and subdivisions. They need to talk to each other. And so there's real emphasis and need that they link up, that the blocks are walkable, and that we're not just expanding on a neighbourhood scale, but bringing it all down to the individual side to make sure that everything works together. So there could be a whole other presentation about the challenges in terms of transport and infrastructure, but I'll just quickly whisk to the next one, which is sort of my area, housing. So with all these people coming to Rolleston, and we're having a bit of a change in demographics, as George mentioned. Initially, it was kind of the families asking for a 4-bedroom home with a bit of land on them. But now maybe the grandparents are moving in as well, and they have different needs. They want to have a smaller house. And so where's this density happening? And what we're seeing on the ground at the moment is what I call horizontal density. So the section just gets smaller and the house gets smaller, rather than actually going up and increasing that way the density. Is this good? Is this bad? It's just kind of stating what's happening on the ground, but this is certainly a challenge when we probably envisage that there would be different typologies. At present, most developers still favouring the standalone single story home. A bit following on from them, I'm sure you're aware, last year the government imposed the medium density standards, and they apply to most parts of Rolleston as well. And then we saw a whole different challenge. Is this opportunity for infill, intensification of some of the older parts, or what are we creating here? Are we still having, you know, an attractive street scene? Most people came to Rolleston, or one of the draw cards was because it was different to a metropolitan area. What are we getting now with these new standards? And is it still safe? Is it private? And that kind of on a site level and build level, that brings definitely new challenges for us as a council, how we approach that. Another thing is we can't just grow on a residential level. We also need to adapt and have the commercial and have the community services go hand in hand with that residential growth. And council has moved really fast and invested in major projects, and I've just popped a few of the major ones on this slide. On the top here, that's the Selwyn Health Hub. That also includes the maternity unit that came from Lincoln, the Selwyn Sports Centre, indoor and outdoor courts, then the Selwyn Aquatic Centre. I think it was built in 2013 and has doubled already. We had to expand it because it wasn't still enough, so many people using it, so really popular. Foster Park, right next to the Selwyn Sports Centre, and the sort of, dare I call it, flagship of Te Ara Atea, the community and library, right in the centre of Rolleston. And that brings me to the next point. So one of the major projects, we're having a town that's emerging, and we have no town centre. So where's the heart of the township where people can come and, you know, congregate? Tomorrow's Anzac Day. Where can these people meet? And so I think it is a one in a lifetime opportunity, but we're working on a Rolleston town centre, and that's well underway. Sort of the ticks sort of signal the buildings that have already been built. That green space is well underway with like a skate park, and yeah, it's definitely, as you can see, version P. So many iterations. More to come, but growth is happening, and growth is happening also in the community space. And I kind of just wanted to highlight that this is part of this growth aspect as well. Could probably be topic of another conversation, and I just leave you with sort of two images. Both of these buildings, you know, a dream there, a dream there. Both of them are built right now. And yeah, just want to say thank you for having us today, and just sort of, you know, dreams come true. Leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you.